Hello and welcome. I'm Jody Clark-Vaisman, Academic Director of the CUNY Baccalaureate for Unique and Interdisciplinary Studies. In this short workshop, Think Like a Scholar, Reading a Research Article, we're going to cover a few things. We'll talk about the value of having some strategies to reading a research article, go into those strategies themselves, and talk about the importance of having research skills and experience and how you can do that with your academics as well as your co-curriculars. Firstly, when you think of a research article, know that it is a genre of writing. So for example, when you think of a haiku poem, you know something about that genre, some specific number of syllables, it's very pared down. If you saw a haiku, without knowing that, you might approach it very differently. Well, the same goes for research articles. It is a genre of writing. It may vary by discipline, but we're going to talk about the most common kind of research article, the kinds used in sciences, natural sciences, for example, social sciences, business, etc. So it may differ by discipline, but by and large, this will give you a general sense. As part of this, we're unpacking the hidden curriculum, things that you're supposed to know in college, but maybe were never directly taught. What we're not going to be talking about here is the quality of the article you're reviewing. So you know it needs to be a peer-reviewed journal, but I'm going to assume that you know that for the purposes of this workshop. Why do we want to do this? Well, having some strategies are going to help you read effectively and efficiently, take notes effectively on the article, going to use your time management because you're going to read the parts that you need to and focus on the parts you need to. It's going to help you decode the formula of a research article by knowing sort of the segments. It's going to help you pay attention to the methodologies used in that study and the choices that are made. And it's going to help you think about your purpose. As you go to read an article, the first thing you want to ask yourself, what is my purpose in reading this article? Am I just summarizing some research findings, in which case you might just be looking at the outcomes and next steps? Or am I interested in replicating this study? So I want to pay attention to methodologies. Or I want to learn more about research. So I want to pay attention to methodologies and other aspects of the article. So let's talk briefly about strategies. The major sections of most articles begin with an abstract, sort of a brief summary, which you should read, and it helps give you a mind map of the study that's going to be presented to you. It's sort of like if you've ever read a textbook and you first skim it before you actually read it to get a sense of the titles, the subtitles, and any highlighted terminology. This is that same idea. It gives you a map of what this article is going to be covering. We'll talk about what you can get out of the introduction, the literature review, the methods or the data used. Usually there's a section on key findings and a section on limitations and implications of this study. So beginning with the abstract, as I mentioned, it can be a preliminary mental map. It can also help you if you're looking for research articles to write a paper yourself, whether or not you want to use that article. The abstract summary will give you an idea about the article. What you should do at this point is, if there's anything mentioned in the article that's not quite clear, that you don't know, note it down. And any questions that you want to ask at this point, it'll help you have a strategy as you dive into the reading. I also recommend you considering, if you're doing a deep read on an article, to come back and reread the abstract at the end, and hopefully you'll have a lot more clarity. The context. Where can you find the context of your study? In the problems and questions sections. And you also see summaries of other kinds of research. Typically, they will note a gap that's in the literature or what the purpose of the study is, often to fill that gap in a place where the literature, that is, other research studies, have not covered. So the problems and questions you're going to see in the introduction, and other research you're going to see in the literature review. Next, there'll be a methods section. I love this Zora Neale Hurston quote, "Research is formalized curiosity. It is poking and prying with a purpose." So it is a formalized curiosity, and there are very distinct methods and procedures for different types of research methodologies, quantitative and qualitative. Hopefully this is just a review for you. But if you see things in an article about analytic technique and you see lots of graphs with numbers, they talk about correlation, regression, logit, these are all clues, if you didn't know, that that is a quantitative study. Things like variables. A qualitative study might talk more about themes, and their approaches might be ethnography, grounded theory, narrative, case study, or a phenomenological approach, which studies a particular phenomenon. So when the author talks about their methods, write it down. If it's exploratory factor analysis and you have no idea what that is, that's fine. Write that down. That might be something that you need to know. But at this point in the methods, just note it. See if you can follow along. Also in the methods section, often called data collection and analysis, you will see the evidence and how it was obtained. If it's survey research, was it records, was it observations? In the analysis section, you'll see how they analyzed the data, how they drew the sample. Are they claiming that it is a representative sample? That is, that particular sample represents some larger population. So a study that was on older folks in the middle of the country is not going to apply to younger folks in the Northeast, for example. So can you generalize? In the key findings and interpretation section, you're going to find the main findings. So do the data fit into the argument? Does it add something new to the literature? Does it claim to add something new to the literature? And does it reinforce prior studies, or does it contradict prior findings? These are all things in the workshop worksheet that you're going to be given that you can take notes on each of these sections. Limitations are where the author is honest about some limitations to this study and how it might affect your interpretation. For example, this was only in this particular time, in this particular place, or the sample. We'll talk about the implications. What are the actions and next steps? For example, findings for how it might be relevant to policymakers and researchers. And as always, almost every research study ends with suggestions for an additional study. It is called research, after all, because you are researching. So those are the major sections of a research article. Now I want to talk a little bit about some tips when taking notes. We talked a little bit about setting goals as you approach the article. What is it? Do you need a thorough read because this is an entirely new topic to you? Or are you have some specific goals? Like, I'm just looking for the outcomes because I'm trying to make a policy or suggest a policy. You can use the note-taking worksheet that I have created for you to answer specific questions based on those goals. If you want a thorough read, it's a great place to start. If you're new to reading research articles, try to answer as many of those questions on the worksheet as possible. One caveat, if you are writing down exact quotes, do have a notation in your note system that shows the exact quotes and the citation there. And if, for example, you went down a rabbit hole and they cited a study and you opened some other study and you wanted to quote that, make sure you're tracking where that comes from. Great way to do that is with citation services, things like Zotero, NREF, any of the free citation services, they all have a note-taking section, and that's a great place to stay organized, and your notes are with each reference, so you're not going to forget who said what. We have compiled a list of library and research resources here both at CUNY and with libraries, writing centers, and opportunities for funded research. So I encourage you to check out this webpage. So we've learned some strategies for each section. In the abstract and introduction, it's gonna help you set some goals for your reading, give you the context and questions. Then you move into the literature review, which is some background and maybe the gap in the literature that they are addressing. Third section is usually methods or data used. You're going to look at the design. What kinds of evidence are they using? Surveys? Are they using observations? And how they analyze that data. Next, you have key findings. Again, data and interpretation. And last but not least, you want to know something from your article about limitations and implications. Usually you can find next steps, which is a great place to find some ideas for articles and of research of your own. So I encourage you to use this worksheet. We will make the link available for you to download. It's essentially an outline of these sections and helps you as you get in the rhythm of reading research articles to address each of these questions specifically. In terms of your education, we live in the information age. I cannot emphasize enough how important it is to have research skills. So in terms of your academics, as you build your area of concentration, think about including methods courses that are used by the disciplines you're drawing on. Think about courses that maybe give you some theoretical frameworks. For example, a friend of mine who's in a doctoral program who's looking at foster youth experiences in going to college was taking a class on psychological and cultural aspects of college going. Make sure for your area of concentration that if you're not taking a methods courses, at least you can incorporate the ability to read research articles, incorporate them into papers. If you have an opportunity, a free choice to read something, look for some research articles. And the crowning jewel of all of that is to write your own thesis or to do an independent study in a major project. If you don't want to take that on, or if you want to build a scaffold so you can get to that point, you could also do research in a faculty member's lab, either for pay or for credit. And in addition to your academics, you can build research literacy by your co-curriculum. So attending research day events on your campus, brief shout out for the CUNY BA showcase, which will also have some research projects. Mentioned working with faculty, you can incorporate research into internships, jobs, or research programs like the summer research programs in that link I shared before. There's lots of free ways to learn data tools. There's a huge community where you can learn R and all kinds of coding that people share with each other. SPSS, there are workshops and videos to learn. So depending on your disciplinary lens that you're using or lenses, think about using some of those data tools and either picking classes for it or doing it on your own. Another way that you can build research literacy is, depending on your area of study, is see if there are clubs that are related or competitions. For example, in business, there are business competitions, and a lot of those competitions are based on being current on research. And there are research-based fellowships that will pay for you to get research experience. For example, the Fulbright is a very famous one. Our students do very well in it. And we have your academic advisors can help you with your application. And we have all kinds of ways to help coach you. In addition to your campus might have a fellowships advisor as well. Lastly, if you're building research literacy, if you think you ever might want to go to graduate school, I suggest you start a file of interesting articles that you read. It could be a digital file, it could be a paper file if you want to go old school. But as you start to collect research articles that interest you, you'll start to see a theme emerge of your various interests, and it might lead you to a graduate program and help you get some background going to prepare you to do that work. kindly take a survey of this workshop. And we thank you so much for coming. Happy researching.